I didn't see it, but in our daily pass along were warnings to be on the lookout for a woman shitting in the stairwells. Today in B-Town Reddit stories. Dear security guards of Reddit. What was the most fucked up thing you've ever saw on your shift? Saw a guy shitting into a bucket all the way at the bottom of our parking garage. When I told him he had to leave, he tripped on his bucket and his ass had what I assume was blood all over it. It was horrible. He then picked up the bucket and put it in his van unsecured, so I'm almost positive it later spilled in his van. I asked if he was okay and he said yes and just left. In public housing there are a fair number of dead bodies that go unnoticed until they start to smell. In motels there are a lot of domestic violence calls. One of the couples, usually the aggressor, will attack security. Lots of prostitutes and drug sales. This is universal in all types of motels, Motel 6 to the 3-star place. We aren't cops, so there is little we can do other than call the cops. Another thing, we encounter way more out of place poop than we should. Not my current security gig, but when I did security in Obetz, Ohio. I was training a new guard, an immigrant from Somalia. I can't remember his name, but he was very unfamiliar with everything about America. One night around 3 a.m. we saw a skunk walking around outside of our guard shack. My trainee had never seen one before and asked what it was. I explained that it was a skunk and exactly what would happen if he got too close to it. Well, he didn't believe me and decided it looked like a cat. He got sprayed and I made him stand outside the shack. It was also his first winter in Ohio. I posted this in another thread about a year ago, but I'll share it here for you up. Many years ago I worked armed security. I was patrolling at an abandoned refinery late one night when a silent alarm was tripped. I went to investigate it when a kid, no more than 19, drew down on me. I tried talking him down, but was unsuccessful. I tried so very hard. He was convinced that the copper he was trying to steal was worth more than his life. He shot at me and I returned fire. He missed me and I struck him in the head. Not one of my favorite memories. People walking by that never appears on footage. Reply. Had something similar. Me and a buddy worked security for an industrial park. We would trade off, one at the cameras and one doing rounds. One time he called out, told me someone just walked by camera 4, which was in a very lit open part of the property, and well, there was no one there. Worst part of the story is there's another camera facing same direction from the other side and it didn't catch anything at all except me walking with my hands in the air saying WTF. Damn you guys all over this shit, wish I had more, but literally was never able to see the videos from the CC footage. Answer. That's how it is at my site. The exterior of the guard shack is watched by 5 different cameras. There's literally no blind spot anywhere near it. Plenty of nights I've been there by my lonesome, only person on the property, and I'll catch reflections of people walking by in the glass. Don't see them when I look around, and I'm the only one on camera. Not just my experience either, every guard who has worked here has experienced it. Worked at a building that had an attached thrift store and saw a fire truck roll up to the entrance on the camera. Ran over to figure out what was going on. I had no calls or alarms going off. Turns out a morbidly obese customer had fallen off the toilet and gotten stuck between the toilet and the wall, and managed to call 911. The part I'd actually consider fucked up was one of the firefighters pulled me aside after and said we took a blanket off the rack to cover them up, but you're not going to want it back. Reply. I worked at one of the big televangelical churches. They had an event called camp meeting where they were way over capacity. We had several elderly women fall off the toilet in the handicap stall in the chapel and get wedged between the toilet and wall, all on the same day. They weren't especially large, but I couldn't pick them up by myself, so I had to rearrange their clothes so they were decent, and get the sheriff's deputies to help pick them up. I couldn't believe it kept happening to different women in the same day, but the other employees just laughed and said, well, that's camp meeting for you. I had a temporary job working overnight security for a hotel. The 3 months I had been doing it were mostly uneventful, but the lack of sunlight was getting to me. I'd start at 11 p.m., do some rounds, wait for the bar to empty out, find an empty smoking room and get high, watch late night TV, raid the kitchen for pastries, then watch the sun come up on the roof and go home at 7 a.m. It was literally my last shift before I started a new job. Everything was going smoothly until 6:30 a.m. The front desk calls me on my radio and says there is a noise complaint from one of the occupied rooms. The clock radio alarm had been going off for 20 minutes. To add to it, the front desk tells me the room requested a wake-up call 30 minutes before and hadn't answered multiple attempts to call. I head up to the room and a maintenance guy joins me just in case. I get to the door and sure enough the clock alarm is blaring full volume. I can hear the phone in the room ringing too, the big heavy older type phone with an actual fucking bell in it. I knock on the door and shout over the noise, no answer. I pound on the door, no answer. I dip my keycard and start to open the door but the upper latch is still connected. I pause. I guess I had unconsciously assumed that the room was empty given the volume of noise in the room. But the security latch can only be closed by someone in the room. My mind raced but there was only one logical conclusion to draw from the evidence. I used a card to pop the security latch and opened the door. Laying face down on the bed half covered by a bedsheet is a middle-aged man with a hairy back. I look at the maintenance guy who gives me a look that says the fuck you want me to do. I enter the room and say excuse me sir in the most authoritative voice I can muster loud enough to be heard over the alarm in the phone. No response. I get next to the bed and louder this time excuse me sir. No response. I reach my hand out, grab the dude's hairy shoulder and shake it excuse me sir. Guy lifts his head up, looks at me confused, and just goes oh sorry. I worked as a concierge at a high-rise condo but part of my duty was watching the cameras and making sure the condo was secure. Anyways, one day I get back from my break and there was a ton of cops in the courtyard because someone had been shot and killed there. They asked me to help them review the cameras so I did. It was an old man who lived in the building and committed suicide. I saw him put the gun to his head, pull the trigger and collapse. I won't forget that image ever. It was really heartbreaking. His wife had died unexpectedly and he decided there was no point on continuing to live. I'm not a security guard but I've witnessed security guards handling it several times. I used to work at a casino and there would be addicts who would not step away from a slot machine for anything. That includes using the bathroom. One time a lady had shit herself, sat in it, and continued to play. Security had to saran wrap her so nothing would leak out and sent her home. I worked security at a hospital for 2 years. One afternoon we had a code gray to remove an unruly guest from the property. He was basically about to start punching doctors in the ER according to dispatch, but right when I got there 2 police were coming through the front door and the guy bolted. He practically threw an elderly nurse to the floor on his way down the hall but I knew there was a T intersection he had to go through if he wanted to get to the fire exit door. I am 280 pounds semi-muscular 6 feet 1 inch and I tackled that guy into the wall so hard his head literally went through the drywall. It turned out he was a domestic abuse repeat offender so it's too bad I couldn't help him find a wall stud. Anyway, I actually got a nice bonus and little award plaque that year so. Good year. Thank you for listening to another B-Town Reddit Stories episode. Hit the subscribe button and check out our channel for more stories. Let us know your opinion about this topic in the comments.